You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Hi, everybody. It's Miss Jen on Talkin Shop. Here on The Experience, we are super excited today. And, we like to support all kinds of comic books. And today, both of our guests are doing comics, what would be called the non-traditional way, and doing their own self-publishing. And have a lot of good experience behind them. So this is the perfect show to watch today if you are wanting so badly to join the band of people that are making comic books, but you want to learn how to go about it. So definitely go and share with all your friends so they can be part of this hour. We'll see you in a second. Everybody, it's time for all the cool information. I'm going to bring on a good friend of mine, Tom Hutchinson, who knows probably more about funding a project to huge success than almost anybody else that I know, and has a very rabid fan base for all of the different titles that Big Dog Inc. is putting out. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm good. Good to do this again.
Are you hanging out in Arizona or elsewhere today?
No, it's Michigan. Unfortunately, I was kind of scheduled to be heading to Albuquerque right now, but there's just too much going on, so I had to unfortunately pull out of Albuquerque Comic Con this coming weekend. So I apologize to everybody. We've got campaigns to be fulfilling that are coming in. I'm running a campaign right now. There's family drama, there's things that's happening. And I was like, you know what, I can't take 2 weeks. And because for those that don't know, I drive to all these shows. So, going out to Albuquerque would be a good solid 3 days of driving, then do the con and then 3 days back. So it's almost 2 weeks of just coming and going. And I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm sorry. I apologize. I hope to see all the Albuquerque folks this summer when they do their summer show. I'll probably be out for that one.
Are you native to Michigan?
No, I was born in Illinois, but I basically, my family lived in California essentially my whole life. My first 40 years we were in California. And then when I was married, my wife got headhunted by a legal firm in Chicago, and we moved to Chicago. And that was about 10-ish years ago, something like that. So I've been in the Midwest somewhere, Michigan, Illinois, for about the last decade or so.
Did you guys get like any of that crazy big storm that hit the east?
Yeah, but not like what you were seeing in the pictures of Buffalo. We got it, but we got maybe a foot or so, maybe 2 feet at the most. But we weren't buried like what we were seeing in Buffalo. That was nuts.
Yeah, we're having a real winter as opposed to like right here now in Texas. It's not so bad, but we've had multiple cold snaps. We're not used to that kind of stuff. It's
you're having the Texas winter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for us, it just means there's some rain.
Right. Some rain.
But now I think everyone's kind of getting worried that it's the new norm because, last year, year before last, we had the big February deep freeze with no electricity. That was not fun. And we just went through another freeze, but the rest of the country went through that freeze. So they all know exactly what we felt.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I was shoveling snow. It was happening.
Oh, my goodness. So tell everybody a bit about you. How did you start in comics?
Basically by the seat of my pants. I was working, my day job, my 9 to 5, and that was fine. It was going well, but I was always a comic book guy. So I kind of started to think about like, okay, I had given up on the art. Like I knew that the art wasn't going to happen. I was trying to learn how to draw and do all kinds of stuff, but I had given up on that. But in the process of learning art, I was using my own character to learn how to draw. And this was my original character, Critter, my superhero character. So as I was drawing her, I was also writing stories for whatever it is that I was drawing. When I was changing costumes and stuff, like, okay, well, if she wore this, it would be this story. If she wore this, it would be this story, whatever. And so when I finally realized like the art is not going to happen, I just don't have the time to learn and do everything that's required, I fell back into the story side of it. I was like, well, maybe I could write a book and then have somebody else draw it so it wouldn't look like garbage. And then, this would be just a side thing for me. The whole plan was I'll just make comics and I'll do like cons on the side and just have fun on the weekends, and I'd still have my job. So I started working on Critter. I started working on Penny for Your Soul. And they were coming along as, 2009, 10-ish is where we had our big recession, and everything just kind of went in the tank. And the job that I had, I was laid off from. And so, but I had Critter and Penny for Your Soul like well into production. And so I was like, well, let me see what this can really be. Like, let me take a shot at this before I go get a job at Walmart or whatever to make ends meet. Let me just try this first. Mm-hmm. And so I put tons of energy into finishing the books and then pitching them to Diamond, which is the way that you do it. You hope that Diamond says yes, which they did. And then it goes into the Diamond catalog. You hope that the retailers say yes, which they did. And then you hope that the fans ultimately at the end of the chain of command here say yes. Which they did. We sold out of our books, our first printings immediately in that first year, which totally blew my mind. And it was sort of like a switch flipped, and we were, I think we can do this. I think we're off to the races. And basically since 2010, that's really all I've done is just create Big Dog Ink., create my titles, and basically be in the comic book world in one way, shape, or form.
So, okay. So you decided that you were not going to do the art. Was it difficult to try to find the caliber of artists that you had envisioned for the books?
Yeah, because what was in my brain was, well, this is going to look like a Marvel book. I'm just going to go get Marvel artists that are that quality, and I'm just going to put them on my book. And it's like, that's the way it's going to be. Now, the funny part is it's exactly what happened. The guy who I got was for Critter, was a student of Ed Bennis, who was a big Marvel DC guy. And so I had a book that basically looked like freaking Wonder Woman looked like, right? I was like, oh my God, what is going on? Like, this is like the luck of the Irish happening right here. And then, of course, as soon as he finished that issue, he was headhunted by DC, and he was off to drawing Justice League and Teen Titans and doing all of the things. And that's Jose Luis. A lot of you guys might know him. He's literally worked for everybody. Marvel, DC, Dynamite. I mean, he has been everywhere. And he's an amazing artist. And every now and then we talk, and he's like, he'll tell me like, I feel so bad that I ditched you to do this other stuff. And I'm like, dude, I understand. Like, I'm not going to tell you to come draw Critter rather than draw Justice League. Are you kidding me? So he's an amazing guy, and he's come back a few times and done some covers and stuff for us. So I love Jose. But he kicked us off with an amazing looking book. And then from there, it was just sort of, this is going back now like 12. Well, no, we've been doing BDI for 13 years. So this has to be like now 15 years ago-ish as we were starting. And there was no Facebook, all these groups and things that were like, this didn't exist. So I was finding artists on a website called Digital Webbing, which was basically a place where people would post their own stuff. Like, hey, here's my book or whatever. But the cool part, the really unique part was there was a classifieds section where you could say, I need an artist, I need a colorist, I need whatever. And then the people on the site would be like, hey, I can do this stuff. And so I would get all these samples from people, and it was really, really fun to do. And I've always been an art guy, so I kind of in my brain always know what I want. And I would go through all these samples, and I would find the things that like, this makes sense, this makes sense, this makes sense. And then when we lost Jose, I had to find another artist, which was kind of weird because I found a guy that I really liked, but it was a polar opposite style from Jose. But I felt that it fit the superhero fun energy style that Critter was, and that was FICO Ocio. And he ran the entire series that we did while we were still doing it. He only missed like 2 issues out of the 25 that we did. So he was epic in creating Critter for me. And then once you kind of get in, then it sort of becomes 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It's like, I know this guy who knows this guy who knows this guy. And then you start to create, just sort of your own little circle of people to find new artists and colorists and whatever that you need as you're going along. So, certain guys are part of studios, and if you need another artist, you're like, hey, who's at your studio that could do a book? Oh, I know this guy. He's going to do that book. So that's what happened with when we went to Legend of Oz. I needed an artist right away, and JB Neto was part of a studio. He's my Penny for Your Soul guy. He was part of a studio down in Brazil, and he was like, well, talk to the head of the studio. And I talked to Alzir, and he was like, yeah, here's all these guys. And there was Allison Borges. And I was like, oh my God, that guy right now, let's go. And again, we were off to the races again. So for those that are just starting, it's really a building process, not just you and your worlds and your books and your characters, but you're building a foundation for all of your connections to everything. And as you build connections to artists and colorists and everything, that will just naturally expand, like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon theory.
Oh yeah, so you got an Uber fan on here that wants more Joan of Arc books.
Joan of Arc. I can tell you that Penny for Your Soul, in general, will be back in 2025 for our 15-year anniversary, and it's the 15-year anniversary of Penny for Your Soul, 15-year anniversary of Big Dog Inc. We are already actively working towards a new series of Penny for Your Soul, which will include Joan of Arc in 2025. Spoiler alert.
Oh, and I also have to give a big shout out to John, because John is one of our sponsor members. So thank you so much, John, for joining us. You get the special green mark of awesomeness. And we appreciate you very much. That's how we get to have this cool programming. So when did you from the beginning have those super stellar like variant covers? Because those are always so mind-blowing to me that you can continue to turn out better and better and better variant covers.
We didn't. It was something that I was aware of this would be 2010 when we were publishing. So it was something that we were aware of was kind of being done, not nearly to the level that it is now, but I wanted to focus primarily on selling a book for people to read before worrying about anyone collecting anything. So we didn't do variant covers on Penny for Your Soul for quite a while. We had a couple of convention exclusives along the way, but it wasn't actually until issue 5 of the series that we even had like an A-B cover for retail. And then we did 5, 6, and 7, and then when we got into the second volume, our variant started to expand a little bit. But again, there was no Kickstarter back then. Like none of this was happening. It was just retail and conventions. So we were basically just making Comic-Con exclusives wherever Comic-Cons we went. So each issue would have a couple of variants based on what cons we did for that period of time. But now with Kickstarter and with us specifically doing far fewer shows, we kind of create these Kickstarters and crowdfunding things as sort of little mini Comic-Cons. Like you have, instead of 3 days at con, you have like 3 weeks to, build this event around your book or whatever it is that you're making. And so now we have, so we'll have 7 or 8 variants within the campaign itself, but it's like one big 3-week event versus like, hey, we've got 7 covers at this weekend event. So it's a little bit different, but it's been working. It's been working well. We've been doing Kickstarters and crowdfunding now for, what did we figure out? Like almost 7 years has been exclusively our distribution model, has been Kickstarters. And then, of course, it goes to eBay and the web store and everything else. But that's just whatever's left over. In a lot of cases, these things just sell out on the campaign. There's nothing left over. So if you are interested in anything that we do, everything's very limited. So we only do like 150 copies, sometimes less. So if there's something that you want, we try and tell people, like, don't wait, because if you have to go secondary market 6 months later, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. And you can just go look up Big Dog Ink on eBay and you'll see stuff that's there that's really, really mind-blowingly crazy. You know, if you go back to the early books that we've been doing, and there were only a couple hundred copies of those things. So
yeah, I love that you make them limited like that. So there really is like this value for your customers. It's not just like they can get it anywhere. I just want to say hi to Reese from the UK. Thank you so much for joining us. We're super happy to have you on. And also just a reminder, this is a fully interactive interview process. So if you guys have any questions you want to ask the Tom, you just pop it over there in the comments and I'll make sure that it gets seen. As long as it's not, you know, like silly things like what's your favorite color? Make it apropos, please. Oh, yeah, that's a beautiful cover. Legend of Oz
Emerald editions, yeah.
Emerald.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, so Sean's got a good question right off the bat. How do you go about deciding how many variants you want per issue and coming up with variants like emerald covers, like for Legend of Oz?
So how many is kind of a tricky question. It's there's a few answers. Some of it's budgetary for you. Some of it's budgetary conceptually for like your audience. I mean, and we've had campaigns where we've had 15 to 20. We've had campaigns where we've had like 6. Where we kind of land on that now is we've sort of found a balance of like, we want to do enough that, you know, we can have a strong campaign and that we can have a breadth of different artists. But we also want to have it tight enough that if people want it all, it's not that difficult for them to get it all. It's not like they have to come in and drop $1,000 to get everything. Like that's asking a lot of your customer base. So a lot of our campaigns have sort of reduced down to about 6 or 7 variant covers. And then we might have a couple of add-ons sort of along the way, but even that kind of has been reduced for the most part. So that's kind of where we are. Like if you look at the Ursa Minor one that we're going to talk about, there's 7 covers, and that includes the A cover, just your basic A cover like you'd find at a retail store. And then you know, we do holofoils and stuff like that, but it's the same cover, just in like a holofoil edition. So if you just like the regular version, just go get the regular version, you're fine. But we have people that like the fancy schmancy stuff. The Emerald editions actually came about because of the Legend of Oz. So I knew that we were going to do foils, and we had done some just regular like rainbow foils. But I started to think like, because Oz is very color based. All of the lands of Oz have a color base: red, green, purple, and so on. So I thought for our campaigns that we could do colored variations of these books. So the Emerald editions were the first thing that we did, because it's like the Emerald City, and they were wildly popular. And so we continued them throughout all 3 issues that we did on the campaign. But we also had a few that were like sapphire editions, onyx editions, you know, just different colors that kind of matched what we were doing with Oz. And those were super popular too. So that came down to Princesses versus Zombies that we just did last year.
Oh,
we actually did what we call Pretty in Pink editions, which it was day 1 only. You could get a pink holofoil edition of the princess art, which again, people just lost their minds for those things. So it's just any way that you can find something to do something a little bit different than what's sort of normally in the market, you're going to draw some attention to yourself. And that's something that we've been doing on our campaigns randomly. Like with Ursa Minor, we do blood foils. So it's a nice red, red holofoil sheen over it. That kind of stuff. Just try to be creative as best you can. Because, you know, comics are not interactive. It's not like a video game where people are like, ooh, I got to do that, you know. So you got to make the visual part of it, both the cover and the insides. That has to be the interactivity part. People have to want to look at that. They have to want to hold that. They have to want to open it and see what's happening inside. And that's sort of the hard part that we have to deal with as far as making comics is how do we engage an audience that has TV and movies on their freaking phone? Like it's competition. That's the real competition for us is these dumb plastic slabs.
There's a good question here from, I'm just going to call you EX because it's I don't know how to spell all of it. Lieutenant, I'm going to call you Lieutenant. Have you ever considered doing subscriptions to include variants and stuff?
Not really, just because we don't produce anything on like a regular basis. We're not like a monthly company. Like a lot of monthly companies, like Zenoscope or Scout or Aspen or whoever, they put out books on a monthly basis. They're in retail stores, all that kind of stuff. Our model is basically quarterly. We do quarterly Kickstarters with the occasional smaller campaign dropped in. So a subscription-based thing would be tricky to work out, because even then, like, what would be the point of the subscription if you just know every quarter there's a book available on the web store, right? And you just go get it. Now, obviously, there's ease of use. Like if you were to say, I'm going to subscribe to the 5 campaigns that you do for the year, and you just get a book every so many months, then you sort of get like a surprise. Oh, I've got a book, yay! So there's something to that maybe, but it just seems like logistically, that's not something that the world runs off of anymore. I mean, there's no magazines don't exist anymore for the most part.
Really?
It's just the way that if we were doing like monthly stuff and we were back in the retail stores and so on, that's something that maybe would make a little more sense. But just because of our business model, I think that's sort of a little outside of our box.
All right. Spiliotopoulos wants to know, how was it working with Aspen?
Aspen was great. Yeah. We reached a point with Big Dog Inc. that we kind of realized that we had gone as far as we could go within the system of Diamond and retail stores and all that. And we kind of thought like, okay, so we need somebody to probably put their name behind us to sort of to tell the industry like, yes, these guys are worth your time. And I had known some of the Aspen guys for a while, and we just brought it up to them. We're like, does this make sense to you? Like, what if you guys published Big Dog Inc. under the Aspen banner? Does this make sense? And they were interested. They were like, yeah, this makes sense to us. It expands our product base. It gives our customers new things to look at. And it was like, okay, let's do this. And we did it for 3 years. And really the only reason that it stopped was because Aspen sold part of the company to a movie studio so that they could do the Michael Turner movies that they're trying to do. And there just wasn't a place for us to be in that new structure. And that's when we bounced out and started doing Kickstarters as basically our permanent distribution method for new books.
Let's talk about the currently running Kickstarter that people actually know over and join in and grab up. What is going on in this one?
So this is Ursa Minor. This is our horror title. Well, one of our horror titles. We do a few of them. But this one is celebrating 10 years of publishing. Last year, it came out. Last year was its 10-year anniversary. And so this is the 3rd issue of the 10-year anniversary story arc. The first issue was 20 pages. The last 2 were 40. So basically, we do 100 pages of comics in 3 campaigns. So if you haven't gotten into this, it's very easy. There's a quick catch up. Click a button, you'll get all the issues, and you'll catch up to the series very quickly. If you are an art collector, Keith Garvey, Marissa Pope, I'm going to forget everybody that's on it, Brian Peterson. We have tons of artists that do some amazing stuff with the vampire world, the werewolf world, the horror world that we have in general. But this is basically the end of this arc. It is Naomi, who's the last of the werebears. She is our lead character. It is Naomi versus Dracula in the vampire embassy, directly after Dracula's wedding and the Feast of Men, which is literally what it sounds like. Basically, the vampires gather up dudes from the local areas and feast on them as part of the big wedding ceremony. And of course, now Naomi shows up and is there to take down Dracula. And that is what is this final issue focuses on. It's very sort of like, I grew up with like 70s and 80s horror. And so it's very much sort of that. but then, you know, spun through my weird brain to become what it is. It becomes, it's very, this particular arc is very violent. Obviously, dudes are getting chomped on. There's a lot of action to it, but there's a lot of story to it as well. So we don't skimp on story. We don't skimp on art. We want to give you guys a really great experience throughout the whole thing. And I will just say that don't think that the ending that you expect is the one you're going to get.
Ooh, that makes me happy. That's really awesome. So you mentioned it kind of in passing, but I just wanted to have a clarification statement. You were saying that it would be really easy to catch up. Is that one of the choices in the campaign to be able to get all of the stuff that came before?
Yes. So you can get literally the entire series if you want. There's one like super catch up where you just get everything. Or if you just want to sort of try the book out and you just want this particular story arc, which is 3 issues, it's just called a quick catch up. Click, you can get those 3 issues, try it out. And then if you want to go back, you can just go to our website at any time, get the old issues, the trade paperbacks. You know, you can work your way backwards if you just want to do a tryout and see if it floats your boat. But if you want to just dive all the way in, there's a way to dive all the way in too. And we can do it physically and digitally too. There's digital copies as well.
And then I love that you have your shows on the Comic Book Shopping Network where you get to like interact, you know, live and show individual issues, including some pretty rare exclusives. So people can, you know, like, instead of just like going to a website and clicking on things and choosing them, which is perfectly fine, they can actually have some personal interaction with you about, you know, who did this, what's the decision-making process for what that was going to look like, and all those kinds of things. I think that's super fun.
Yeah, and we have the ability to bring on the artists too. So we've been starting to do that and having guest artists on the show. We're going to be expanding that a little bit to be having some exclusives where, you know, you can get that stuff signed by the artists. And you know, we've been kind of tinkering with the abilities of technology now to see what we can do beyond just saying, here, buy a book. So, you know, it's all evolving. And if you guys are part of the Comic Book Shopping Network, we do a show on Sunday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, and Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. So that's where we are.
Yep. And for anyone that's not familiar with the Comic Book Shopping Network, it's a Facebook-only selling group, all vetted sellers. Sorry. And we have a lot of creators and store owners that you can support LCSs, we'll say, on that channel also.
7,500. 7,500 members, growing all the time. It's like the Home Shopping Network, but it's comics and toys and pop culture, and it's you know, like 18 hours a day it's running. So yeah.
Sean, we're gonna ask you a question super fast. Do you have any brand new series debuting this year you can talk about? Good job.
We debuted 2 new series last year. We debuted my Jaws tribute book. It's only an island if you look at it from the water. And we debuted our Gladiator book called Sand and Scales. Those both debuted last year. This year, we're going to have at least 1 new book, although it's a spinoff. It's a spinoff from Ursa Minor. It's called Yeehaw Vampires. It's basically like Thelma and Louise meets the Dukes of Hazzard and their vampires. So that's coming this summer. And then there is one other brand new title that we have not told anybody yet that's going to hit at some point during the year. And then also throughout the year, there are special days, like we have National Princess Day and Goth Day and things like that. We're going to be having some special issues for some very special days coming up this year that will be little fun, little mini stories, little 8-page stories. The first one will be in March. March 20th is Alien Abduction Day. And we're going to be doing a little mini story for Alien Abduction Day with one of our characters. So we'll be doing those types of things throughout the year as well.
I'm going to have Yeehaw Vampires because that sounds ridiculous. We've already kicked up the Kickstarter page. It looks like John's already gone over and got himself pledged up.
Beautiful. So that he was number 200 then. We have now hit 200 backers in basically 2.5 days. 201 backers now in 2.5 days. This campaign has gone well beyond what we expected. And we're literally only on day 3. So we're going to have to really kind of think about how to keep pushing the envelope and get you guys stuff to check out. We've unlocked 5 stretch goals now. So much more to come. So keep watching and there'll be more happening.
Perfect. All right, everybody. Make sure you follow Tom and / Big Dog Inc. If you follow Big Dog Inc., you'll get Tom's stuff. Definitely follow them. All quality stuff. I love everything they put out. If you've never tried them before, you absolutely should put it on your list of things to try and love.
The best comics you've never heard of.
It's true.
Guaranteed.
Be a good friend and tell your friends about them too, because, gotta be good friends. Thank you so much, John. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. I'm always happy to be here. Thanks.
All right, stick around, everybody. We have another guest coming up just after the break. See you in a sec.
Did you know that across America there are over 2, maybe even 3 live stream producers who can't even afford Mountain Dew? Take Brian here. Brian has gone 2 weeks without a sip of Red Bull. If it goes on much longer, he may take a shower and get a real job. Situations like this are as tragic as they are preventable. Join the experience on YouTube and gain access to special emojis and members-only streams. For less than a cup of coffee, you can keep socially awkward hermit people working from their parents' basements where they belong. Scan the QR code on the screen to join. You'll be glad you did.
Welcome back. Sorry, I was jamming to our music there. I kind of dig it. We have got some awesome stuff going on today. I've been really excited about this. There's been a new collaboration of amazing creators that has put themselves together, and have got some books coming out to your local comic shop really soon. So keep your eye open for them and make sure your LCS knows about their books, because they're new. They might accidentally skip by them in the order book. We don't want that to happen. From newly formed Band of Bards, please welcome Jay Sheik.
Hi.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I apologize for the locale. I caught me on a work day, so I'm tuning in from my truck.
If you only knew how many interviews we did from people's cars. It's all good.
All right. To join the list.
So, Band of Bards, what can you tell me about how you guys all got together?
I'm trying to remember my first awareness of them, but it was going back to late 2020. They had put an open call for pitches, and I had a samurai comic in need of a home, and it was kind of in a transitional phase as far as the story and where I wanted it to go. And so I took the pitch pages that I had been sending around and sent them off one more time, and I didn't really hope or expect much from it, but it was one of those where you throw your line out and actually catch a fish. It was great. Tim got a hold of me, and we've been talking about what Hush Ronin was going to be pretty much ever since, and finally it's come to form as a 50-page first issue, and I'm pretty happy with it.
So is this your first creative work in the comic book world?
It's my first to make it into Diamond Previews, or at least of my own. I had an anthology piece that predates it in there, but I had gotten it published back in 2019 as an ash can. I brought the original, different story now than what it used to be. It's gone through quite an evolution from when I first started drawing it to where it's at now. And but yeah, as far as like a full-size comic solo project, this is my first.
So, do you have a background in some other thing? Are you a lawyer or?
I'm a college art professor by day, as my mild-mannered alter ego anyway.
Oh,
Is
I
where I'm
love
at
it.
right now. Yeah, I've been working freelance in comics. I found it much more lucrative to draw other people's projects than it was to draw my own. So very often, Hush Ronin has kind of taken a sideline. And I've got a couple of others that I've been in development on for almost as long, but this one has gotten the brunt of my attention.
You want to name drop your school?
North Idaho College. Go
Oh,
Cardinals.
nice. That's wonderful. So, how does one become an art professor?
Well, I spent 20 years in college. I mean, I probably should have had 2 doctorates by now, but I've got a BFA in animation and a MFA in illustration. And the MFA is the one that people seem to care about. That's what ultimately got me the job. It was terminal at that point. I guess you call it a PhD in illustration because I can't go any further than that. So, Dr. Illo.
There you go. So, has it always been a love of yours? Have you been drawing since you could pick up a crayon?
Pretty much, yeah. I used to have to go to work with my mom. She owned her own hair salon, and I'd hang out under the desk and use up all of her scratch paper drawing terrible dinosaurs. And yeah, one of those
No,
things
I've heard.
was it?
So sorry. I heard from lots of people that are creative in the creative realm, specifically mostly artists, that have said that the kind of like the key, other than if you just have supernatural talent, which I don't know if anyone just is born with, but that they said that the best thing you can do is just draw and draw and draw. So has that been true for you?
100%. Yeah. Actually, in my drawing box here,
Oh wow.
I've written that very word on the inside of the lid as a reminder to myself to draw. But I always think of, talent is determination that's found its bliss. And it's one of those things, like if you put a piece of paper and a pencil in front of me, I guess I'll either write words or draw pictures, but I'm more likely to draw pictures.
It's so funny. I think I have all my inking supplies in a similarly sized, let's say, tackle box.
Exactly. It smells way better than a tackle box, though.
No, that is so true. So true. So from what I'm hearing, like you are doing everything on the creative things that you're working on for yourself, that you're doing the writing, the penciling, are you doing coloring and lettering and all of it?
Yeah, Hush Ronin is mostly black and white. There's some selective color. It's kind of similar to what Frank Miller might have done with like That Yellow Bastard, except the only aspect that I have not done myself is the lettering, which was done phenomenally by Leland Bjerg, a friend of mine up in Canada. He kind of came in at the 11th hour and saved me an abysmal lettering job of doing it myself.
Yeah, I don't think people understand truly what a special skill that lettering is and how much it can affect the look of a comic book to its success or detriment.
Oh, I completely agree. It's like the sound designer on a film. Like you can watch a film that's got low video or like low picture quality but has great audio, but even the highest def video, if it has terrible audio, is unwatchable. I feel the same way about lettering. And it's one of those things, like I dismissed it in the beginning and I tried my hand at it, and it's an art unto itself, and my hat is off to those who do it well.
Yeah, because it's I thought for a long time that it was just like people would form their own lettering style and then everyone just used a computer and filled it in. And having tried to do that as a format, it's so obvious. It doesn't look obvious when you're like, it looks like it's computer generated when you're looking at a good lettering job. But man, if it is computer generated, it's like no good, no bueno.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like when it's done well, you don't even notice it. And I think that's kind of its learning to notice the unnoticeable about it is what I kind of tried to key into, because it's I got a critique on one of my pitches once where I had done the lettering, and it wasn't good. Heather Antos tore me apart. She didn't even get to talk about the art. She spent pages and pages talking about how bad my lettering was.
Oh
So
my God.
I haven't. Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing better than getting ripped apart by Heather Antos. I'm sorry. Like,
yeah,
that would be
yeah.
the
I mean,
most
like
awesome thing.
it was an honor, but
So, what were your influences growing up that kind of push you toward the form of comics?
I got into comics as a result of a Simpsons episode. The episode Bart Milhouse, Bart pool their money to buy Radioactive Man #1. And it appealed to my inner collector, and I spent years looking for my own Radioactive Man #1, and then Bongo Comics actually made one. I got it. I've got it double, triple bagged, encased in a special box. That's like my holy grail comic, even if it's not worth a whole lot of money. But um, and then after that, it was like it freed me up. I wasn't looking for anything anymore. I could just enjoy comics for being comics, and that's right around the time I started realizing, like, oh, people actually draw these. And I was really into Mark Silvestri's work on Wolverine back in the 90s. I just really loved his pencils on that, and decided this is kind of what I do. And I've gone back and forth. I've run away from it. I've run back to it. And um, I think Brian K. Vaughan talks about it a bit, because he's had gone back and forth from film to comics, but comics really give you the visual medium that you'd have with film, but you're not limited by budgets necessarily, or casting calls that are outside of your discretion. And um, it was very much my first love, and I think my true love as far as art mediums go.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you have like an artist that you think your style is like?
I tend to gravitate towards guys like Sean Phillips or David Mazzucchelli. Joshua Hickson is another. When I started doing freelance stuff, I was very into his work, looking at when he did Shanghai Red back in 2018. Just brilliant stuff. I love the loose line quality of it, the ragged shapes, all the spot blacking, and trying to mimic some of that, because I tend to favor a more natural look of things. I'm not like a superhero type artist, but it comes to like crime and horror, things where there's actual human beings involved, that's where I tend to bliss out.
Yeah, and that mentioning that series, like if you guys have not read Shanghai Red, you should just go find it. It's such a good series.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful book.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Tidbits on the history of Oregon, things I didn't know about the logging industry up there, and different practices in the port in Portland.
Mm-hmm. I'm super nerdy for any comic book that in it teaches you history, or at the back has like, when they sometimes do those double page spreads that actually tell you like what it's based on, the history of that period, or the behind the scenes kind of stuff. Love them.
I've got a idea in the back of my head for a graphic novel about Oliver Cromwell and a couple of others that dip into history, and I'm actually bringing a lot of that into the Husharonan mythos now, with Mesopotamian mythology, and even some stuff in Elizabethan England with John Dee and Hermeticism, and goes all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And Will, you just missed it. We just talked about comic book inspiration. So if you go back just a couple of minutes, you'll be able to catch that from him. We have someone that just popped on. So tell everybody a little bit about the story of Husharonan without being spoilery. What can we get? What can get us all hyped?
Tried to think, hard to encapsulate it. And retaining some level of modesty. I remember in some of my pitch letters, I was describing it as like an Akira Kurosawa movie scripted by Neil Gaiman and H.P. Lovecraft. I would at this point, that's Gaiman set a very high bar, as does Lovecraft when it comes to monsters and things. It's it's almost like a Batman sort of story. You've got a kid orphaned by a senseless, violent tragedy, and then finds out that there are other underlying betrayals behind it. But at the core of it are these heirloom artifacts that are being sought by the warring factions in Japan that turn out to be like at least they originated in Mesopotamia and kind of digging into that part of the mythology. But to give it, I'd call it a MacGuffin in a sense, a magic sword that can topple whole cities at a blow or at a stroke. And the ensuing game of keep away that the main character kind of gets wrapped up in, the adventures that he gets pulled into as a result, people he meets, sort of kick him all over the place until we reach the end, and there may or may not be some level of divine intervention from the Shinto pantheon.
Now,
So
how did you decide on mixing together things from Japanese lore and Mesopotamia? Did you do some research and there's some ties that we don't know about?
I don't know that there are ties. I tend to just kind of go with what interests me personally, and a lot of this stuff was like, well, you know, like if I brought something from Mesopotamia into Japan, I can create some kind of a causal link to how it might have gotten there. Getting into, I was like into pseudoscience or pseudo archaeology, so to speak. But you know, in the realm of fiction, you know, nothing's really off the table. So getting to play around in both sandboxes, or you know, combine sand from both sandboxes and playing it simultaneously, it was an opportunity to write the kind of story that I wanted to read.
Yeah, I love that. It's as they say, it's really tough to make a truly unique story. So sometimes you have to like say, okay, well, maybe these don't have any historical connection, but well, the comics, this could be really interesting if they did.
I don't know that it's completely free of its cliches, but I like to think that it brings in enough stuff from the periphery that not a lot of people know about or talk about, to keep it at least interesting, if not completely original.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Okay, so your original Ash Can you showed us, was that the complete story then, or was that just like your foray into here's an introduction to this where I want to go with this?
Yeah, it was the original story was kind of simplistic. I actually started off with I've got it here. I don't know if you can see it very well, but I've got a little chibi looking samurai there. This is the drawing, and I couldn't decide what the mouth should look like, so I didn't draw one. And then an idea occurred to me, like, well, maybe he doesn't have one, and maybe he lost it because he was a complete asshole and was going around, you know, mouth was longer than his sword, so to speak. He became sort of a Deadpool kind of character. And I wrote the story in that way, where he's on the path to losing his ability to speak. And then I liked his wittiness and his quippiness in there, and realized that I was about to take from readers probably the most enjoyable thing about the character. And, you know, like that becomes sort of the story. And not that I've wholly abandoned the idea of it, but the other aspects of the world that I was exploring, the kinds of mythologies that were developing, or the things that the mythologies were showing me, ultimately started suggesting something completely different, which was the direction I ended up running with for the new one that's coming out.
So you've mentioned kind of things that got changed. Were there other things that you were thankful for having, like the gap in between the Ashcan and the concept and what's going to be in the comic that everyone's going to get at their local comic shop? Were there some big steps that you were like, thank goodness I had that opportunity to change this now?
Yeah, I'm thankful that there was a prototype. I mean, at least in so much as I could gauge people's interest in it, what they thought of the art or what they thought of the story. I regret that there wasn't much follow-up to the original. I had a second issue in the works, and then things started kind of going pear-shaped on my own end. They were going not so hot on the publisher's end, and then it all just sort of collapsed into indefinite hiatus. And it gave me the time to really, first kind of lick my wounds, but also retool things, because it had gone through so many drafts even to get to the point that it was at prior. This new overhaul I was to the point where I couldn't just keep telling people I'd reinvented it again, because it felt like, uh, I don't know, they say like, an artist, a piece of an artwork is never finished, the artist merely abandons it. That was Picasso who said that.
Yeah.
But it felt kind of like that. It was just like my baby, and I could not stop changing its diapers.
Trust me, it is a very common thing that I hear from all creators, writers and artists alike. They just say it's never a finished product. I'll always want to go back and fix something.
Yeah, I have to agree with that.
But you have to let it out in the world at some point. So is this is Hush Ronin in this week's releases? Are we on top of it this week?
I believe the 23rd, so another week or two.
Plenty of time for people to add it to their polls. That's awesome.
Yeah. I've lasted reasonably well on the pre-orders, and it's still available for order through the Band of Bards site. And they have two versions. There's the newsstand edition. Because of the length, it's priced at $9.99, and there's a gold foil edition available as well for $14.99.
How many pages?
50.
50. Is it traditional binding or prestige binding? That square bind?
I'm actually not sure. I'd have to check on that. I haven't seen a finished one yet.
Yeah, it kind of the page length kind of puts it in. They could go either wayness.
Yeah, it's kind of like right on the cusp of like graphic novella versus the saddle staple. I want to say it's I don't know that it's traditional.
Okay. And is this an all encapsulated single shot, or is this just start of a larger storyline?
Start of a larger one. It's enough to close things off and tie up most of the loose ends presented in its own story. It does, I would say, leave on a cliffhanger. It does leave you prepared for the next one, which is going to sort of drop into a different pool altogether before it draws us back into where the first one leaves off. But ultimately, I've got it down to a 4-part series.
Oh, perfect. So, as you guys have gotten to know each other a little bit better in the band of Bards, have any of you thought up creative projects to work on together?
Yeah, actually, there's another one that I'm doing with Tim and Chris outside of Hush Ronin called Brace Yourself. It's a very long title. Christopher Kubrick, Nebraska, Matilda, Save the World from fucking Nazis. True story. I've got most of the issue already penciled, but it's a very, very wild, very violent revisionist history that imagines a world where the Nazis won World War II prior to it even starting, and what that world might look like in the mid-1990s. Get us onto the track that we're on, roughly what we're on now, with how World War II actually did turn out. But yeah, it's been a hell of a lot of fun to work on. I'm doing that with Chuck Satterley and Jason Michalski. They're writing, and they'd hit me up in August, and before we could really even start pitching, we talked to Tim, or maybe it was Chris, but it had a home at Band of Bards before we could get the cover letter finished, basically. So that was pretty cool.
All right, who came up with the title? Because now everyone that's on is like saying we're sold on the title alone.
Maybe Chuck or Jason or both of them. Their partnership is seamless. I mean, as far as like reading the script, like they work. I mean, they're sodium and chlorine. They've come together to make some brilliant salt. It's hard to know where one begins and the other ends, and they're just that they they work together so well. But yeah, you want to look to them. They kind of pulled me in, and I, once I heard the premise, I couldn't say no. So
So is
uh,
Band of Bards like a normal publishing house, or is it more like a cooperative?
I would say a little bit more like a traditional one. It's cooperative in that it's kind of most of us know each other. Like Daniel Calvin's another. He's got American Dreams coming out through Band of Bards.
Yep.
And these are people that I've known almost from the inception of my career, such as it is. So there's it's a very conversational kind of life to it, which is nice. I don't really have any fear of emailing anybody almost with any question. It's not like I've got to ask permission to do things, or who do I talk to about this. It's still and it is now just small enough to where everything's very accessible and very personable.
Love it. All right. So a final question is one for me also. I am obviously a very poor person to try to hunt people down on social media, and I tried to find where your stuff is sitting. Where is the right place for people to follow you about your comic book work?
Twitter's where I'm probably most active. Is at Sheik Media, SCHIEKAPEDIA, and I keep a portfolio of my stuff, including I've been working on a Sandman tarot card set that's on my website at jchic.com.
Is that available now, or just it's in works?
It's in the works. It's a passion project, we'll call it. I started it as a mode of catharsis a couple years ago, and people really responded to the cards I was making, so I just kind of continued to make them as I can. And I got, I think, 32 cards now. So one of these days I'll have a whole deck, and we can go approach Neil about possibly getting it printed.
Oh, that'll be perfect. Thank you so much, Jay. It's been just a thrill to get to meet you. I'm so excited for you guys. The beginnings of something that have so much promise, like these books that I've been seeing from you guys. I'm excited to see the success for you guys, and put all that hard work is going to come to fruition for you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you. All right, everyone, please, thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for everybody that is watching and putting questions in the comments. This is why Talkin Shop is so successful, because you guys are interactive with us. Do share with your friends. Let them know that we're doing these every single week. We're trying to bring you all the information you need. In the next 2 weeks, you're going to see more Band of Bards participants. So you're going to see what else is coming out from them. And don't forget to add these titles to your local comic shop's pull box. It helps them, and it helps these people that are making awesome things. You can support them and be the cool kids on the block, which is what we want.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jay. We'll see you next time. I'm sure we're going to get you on many more times for all of those other things you mentioned.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, everybody, stick around. More stuff on the experience coming up next. Bye.
Join the party. Head over to our Linktree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.